guys, welcome back to Vehicle View. Today we're in Rachel's 2012 California Special.
Yep.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about why you got the car, what you like about Mustangs, or?
When I was little, my parents always took me to the Pavilions car show every Saturday night. So I can honestly say I've been going there probably for 20 years now. So there was I think it was a red 65 Mustang that was sitting on the classic side of the show, and every single time I would go there, I would run over to that car and I would stare at that car and be like, I want this car, this was my dream car. And all throughout my growing up, or whatever, I can't really word that, throughout growing up, if there was a Mustang passing us on the road, Mustang, I'd shout, and my parents would get so annoyed because I'd be calling out every Mustang that was driving down the road. I kind of knew generally what I wanted to do before I even got the car. So my dad begrudgingly let me start looking. And we looked at a few V6s and drove one 2010 convertible GT. It was premium, it was a gorgeous car, It had just been traded into the Subaru dealership on Franklin Drive. And so it was at the back of the lot. It hadn't been washed. It was pretty dirty at the time. But I could tell it was a nice car, and it had 20,000 miles on it. So it was pretty much brand new.
Sure.
I didn't know too much mechanically about the cars at that time. I knew I just wanted a Mustang. So it was a GT. I'm like, yeah, it's a GT. It's going to be loud,
Exactly.
I'll make it loud. It's going to sound sick, I had the car for 3 months, and then some lady came out of nowhere and totaled it. Just plowed right into me. I was on my way to Pavilions, of course.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So I was devastated. I was like, well, I got my dream car and it got taken away 3 months later, So pretty upset about that. I immediately started looking for another Mustang. I knew I wanted another Mustang.
Yeah.
This time I was going to go with coupe, though, because I decided that I did not like the thought of rolling over in a convertible.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So I said, I have nothing wrong with the convertibles, but they're no longer my cup of tea.
Yep.
So I started looking again and waiting on insurance, of course, like always.
Yep.
And when they came back to me, they were giving me $3,000 or $4,000 more than what I purchased the car for.
Oh, nice. You made money on it.
Exactly. And so I was like, oh, this puts me in like 5-0 category now, I'm like, that bumped me way up. I was at 21, and now I'm like, I can be up to 25, I'm like, this is great. So I started looking, because I'd learned a little more by that time. It's like, okay, I'm going to start looking for 5.0s. Fortunately, there weren't a lot that were in my price range. They're just, 5.0s just start out expensive.
Yeah.
So I kept looking. About a month later, I want to say, a couple weeks later maybe, I came across a 2012 white California Special for sale right near Desert Ridge. I was like, oh, that's really close. So I convinced my dad to go and look at the car with me.
Sure.
So, of course, the guy lets me test drive it, and of course, I fell in love with it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I would talk about it for days on end. I'd be like, hey, Dad, that car was just, I'm like, I want that car so bad, and he's like, well, it's like, you're going to have to talk to the guy on price, because he was asking like 27.
Yeah.
I was like, and I had talked to the guy for a while that day. I was like, oh, I really love this car. I really want this car, I'm like, so we'd had some discussions through the phone, and he finally texts me back one day, and he's like, you know what? He's like, I know that you're going to take care of this car. And he's like, and I didn't want to sell it to some kid who's going to wreck it,
Yeah, definitely.
So he's like, but I know you're going to take care of the car, and because I know that, I'm going to drop the price. He dropped the price down to like 26, which was a little more than I wanted, but it was still enough for me to swing it. So
it just seemed to work out.
It all worked out, and the guy was super happy to hand the keys over to me. He's
That's
like,
awesome.
He's like, I'm glad it's going to somebody who likes Mustangs as much as you do. He's like, I was afraid somebody was going to come along and buy it and rip on it and crash it into a wall,
Yep.
So, and that's kind of how it started with this car.
So we want to talk about what you have done to your Mustang, obviously. So let's start off to what you you began, modifying with to where you are now?
This is actually the first car that I've really modified.
Really?
Yeah. Well, the big story behind that is that I didn't have the other Mustang long enough.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a black 2010 convertible GT, and I had it for 3 months, and somebody totaled it. Just plowed into me across 3 lanes of traffic.
Really?
I had a bunch of plans for that one. I was going to do a whole bunch of stuff to that one. But then I had to end up waiting another month and a half, and I found this car, and this was just a basic white 2012 California Special, and picked it up and kind of knew what I was going to do, kind of didn't. A lot of my modification decisions are done relatively last minute.
Really?
When I say last minute, I mean when I buy them, I'm just like, okay, I'm doing it,
Yeah.
I'll think kind of in advance, and it takes me kind of a while to decide, should I really do that? I don't know. I'm a very picky person.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the culmination of like 3 years of modifying, but otherwise this is pretty much the first car that I've actually modified.
So obviously you have a wrap on the car.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. What, I guess, was that the first color you had in mind, or did you have a bunch of other colors?
I was torn. Okay, I love Audis as much as I love my Mustangs. So Nardo Gray was always my favorite on the Audis. I'm obsessed with that color. Anytime I see an Audi in Nardo Gray, I'm just like, oh my god, okay, that's it. That's the dream right there,
Mm-hmm.
So this car has been dipped before, so
Really?
It was 2 different shades of green. The first dip was like a dark forest green, and then the second dip was my favorite of the 2. It was like a bright electric lime, kind of like Aaron's Camaro.
Yeah.
It was pretty bright. This color, however, when I started switching into wraps, I was looking at a bunch of different colors, and there's like shades of blue and some wild ones. Like I was looking at some really sparkly diamond ones that were just outrageous.
Yeah.
But this one was always in the mix. It was never counted out. I never got rid of it. Anytime I held up all the swatches, it was always in there. And, I thought to myself, I am going to drive myself crazy for forever unless I have a Nardo Gray car. So I just was like, all right, screw it. I'm getting Nardo Gray. So I picked the color out. This is actually a little darker than the regular Nardo Gray, but I was okay with that because I saw it on a GTR that happened to be in Echelon getting wrapped at the time.
Really?
Yep. And I was like, what color is that? And they're like, oh, it's this gloss dark gray. And I'm like, huh. Like, that looks a lot like Nardo. It's just a little darker,
Yeah.
So I just went with that. And that's how that kind of came about.
Sweet.
Yep.
What else do you have done, suspension-wise, or do you have, like, any external modifications? What do you have done?
A lot. I'll start with the motor because that's probably the easiest one. Motor is a Boss 302 intake manifold with an air raid coulter intake. Pretty simple. Lund tune on it. The exhaust I did is an off-road H with Flowmaster Outlaws. Suspension is Airlift Performance suspension, of course, and a bunch of SR parts like sway bars and panhard bar and all this kind of other stuff. I think I have BMR rear lower control arms and relocation brackets as well.
Okay.
That's pretty much it suspension-wise. I find that the airlift is overall all you really need, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, I didn't really change much. Let's get out from behind this bus. Exterior-wise, the California Special kind of has all the Boss 302 appearance stuff already on it.
Okay.
It's part of the package, so they got the Boss 302 / California Special front fascia, rear diffuser, and the grille is also part of the package, and so is the wing. All I really added exterior-wise is I have a Cobra R cowl hood. I have the Aeroflow Dynamics canards on the front. I have the Ford Racing World Challenge splitter. I added all the Roush side splitters, the Varsto and ES2 wheels. I mean, exterior wise, it's pretty light on the modification, I would say.
So going back to your airlift suspension, what made you go with that besides going over with lowering springs or coilovers?
Well, I was on Ford Racing lowering springs. They were only a 1-inch drop though, because my driveway, as everybody calls it, is the driveway from hell.
Really?
Yes, it is hard to get in and out of that driveway without scraping. So right now I kind of have to like drive through part of the yard to get back onto the driveway to avoid breaking my exhaust. But the reason I went with airlift is I had a couple friends that were on it. At the time, there weren't very many Mustangs with it, actually, when I was looking at the kit. I knew of 3 or 4. So they were talking to me about it. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I don't want to be as low as some of my friends are, because I had a couple friends that were on coils at the time. And watching them having to zigzag and all that kind of crap just to get in and out of parking lots, because, I mean, when you set it to that height, it's at that height. Like, you're not going anywhere until you adjust it, you know? So I was like, you know, I want to ride low, but I want to have the ability to still get over those ridiculous speed bumps in certain parking lots and be able to get in and out of crazy driveways and all that kind of stuff. So I talked to my friends about the airlift kit a bit more. And they're like, you know, you really like it. I asked them, you know, have you had any issues, all that kind of stuff. They're like, no, the kit's been great, you know. So I was like, okay. So I had just happened to sell a 72 Mach 1 at the time. So I had the cash in hand. So I was like, you know what? It was one of those decisions that I was just like, screw it, I'm just going to do it, you know. So I just
Before you change your mind.
Basically. So I was like, screw it, I'm just going to buy it, you know. So I threw the cash basically out the door and was like, take my money, you know. So I bought the kit. We installed it in a weekend. It took us a little longer because we'd never really messed with the wiring too much on the car. So we were trying to figure out how we could wire it so that it would be tucked nicely and you wouldn't be able to see it, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it took us longer than it can. I mean, people do it in a day all the time. So it's an easy swap. That was another thing. You didn't have to mess with taking the springs off. I mean, like coilovers, you don't really have to mess with that. But it's just a direct out and direct in, just bolts right up. So, and I like the look of the slammed cars. Like, I love seeing a car as low as it can possibly go.
It's beautiful.
So it's like, yes, major props to you, you know?
So, do you have, I guess, what's your favorite thing about this car? I guess probably a lot of things you like. But.
There are a lot of things that I like. If I had to pick it, it would honestly still be the airlift suspension.
Rides really nice.
It rides nice now. It's a little stiff right now because I have it set stiffer. But,
but I mean, we just rode a Mustang with coils. So,
oh, yeah. Oh, okay. So you know that. What I like about the airlift stuff is the adjustability. I mean, it makes the car that much more enjoyable because I can still ride it as low as I want to when I feel like it. A close second with this car would obviously be the exhaust.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you gotta have that 5.0 sound.
Yep, it never gets old. Ever.
It never gets old. I mean, driving through buildings like this and here too, I mean, it
just
echoes like none
off,
other, and it's fun, you know? So, I like, if I had to pick this, the number one always, it's always going to be the airlift suspension. I just love it, you know?
All right, so I guess what's your least favorite thing about this car?
Well, and I will clarify, it's not the airlift suspension, but my suspension creaks a lot. And it's, you know, it's all aftermarket stuff, so it's bound to creak in places.
Definitely.
So, I mean, the only time it really bothers me is when you're on an uneven drive-in and, you know, you're pulling up slowly and it's like, you're like, oh God, it sounds like it's broken, you know?
Is it like the control arms or?
Yeah, it's just all the bushings.
Okay.
My panhard bar is spherical, so it's like you can just hear it metal on metal the whole time. It's not as quiet as the rest of it.
Sure.
So that makes the most noise when I go up over bumps. But you know, it's just like I constantly have to grease all the bushings on the car and all that kind of stuff. So just to quiet it down a little. Yeah. It's meant, you know, you're not gonna have a quiet car. I mean, none of the track cars cars are quiet with their suspensions when you're going around.
They're just trying to do something right. They don't care about
Exactly.
how it sounds.
It's functioning the way it's supposed to.
Yep.
It's just not going to be as quiet as the factory stuff, because factory is obviously all about quiet, enjoyable
it's
ride.
meant to be perfect,
yeah. But that would be my number one irritation, I think, on the car.
All right, now if you want to get into, I guess, future plans, if you have any for this car, or whatever you want to reveal. I guess some people want to keep stuff secret, and so
there are things that I like to keep secret. Obviously, the car is going to get rewrapped. I know that at this point that I'm going to change the colors on it. I am very I get bored easily.
Yeah.
I've had two sets of aftermarket wheels on this car. I like the stock wheels. They stayed on there for a while. They weren't bad for stock wheels, but I only had the one set for like a year, if that. And then this set I've only had for like a year and a half, and I'm already like, I want to change wheels.
Yeah, so you're looking to aesthetic stuff.
Exactly. So I really like the Rohana wheels after seeing them on Eddie's car.
Yeah.
I really like those wheels.
I love those.
Yeah, Rohana makes some nice wheels.
Very simple and clean.
Yeah.
Are you planning to stay NA or?
I was thinking about boosting the car. I've always wanted to. But at this point, I'm at 90,000 miles. At this point, it might be more worth my while to, maybe freshen up the motor first. Or wait until I start having more major issues and then just redo the whole motor, and then get it ready for boost. Right now, I'm still okay,
Yeah.
Car makes 400 something horsepower.
That's not bad at all.
That's not bad at all. I mean,